Hello, welcome to the Wildline Podcast. I'm your host, Dan. This is a podcast about movies and how much money they make at the box office. I had some audio issues this week, so I have a new audio interface. It's kind of a cheaper version. I'm kind of using it as a temporary replacement, so if the audio seems a little off in this episode, I apologize for that. I'm going to get a better audio interface here soon. I'm going to try my best on Ableton to tweak the gain and stuff to make sure everything sounds loud enough with the vocals. It's just recording very softly, so I got to figure out a solution. In any event, hopefully you're hearing me loud and clear. This is going to be kind of a little bit of a different episode. So normally I'll walk through the top 10 of the box office for the weekend, kind of do some hot takes on what's been going on over the weekend. This weekend's a little bit different because it's a holiday weekend, but it's also kind of the official end of summer. So I wanted to do a little bit of a summer review. I feel like I've done that sort of periodically throughout the summer. And I sort of, I basically said the summer was over at the beginning of August. But Annabelle Creation sort of proved me wrong. But now is really sort of the official end of summer, and this is when all of the articles are coming out from like Deadline and other places, sort of doing an evaluation of what happened this summer. So now it's more of a collective analysis that's happening. And I think, what I'm going to do this show is I'm going to quickly walk through the top 10 for this weekend. It's not very exciting. But I'll walk through it, and then I'll sort of do a deeper dive into the summer and what's happened this summer, and sort of, try and take into account what other people are saying, right? And sort of look at the details of what actually happened, and more importantly, like, what does it mean for the movie business in general and where it's going. So let's just walk through the top 10 this weekend for September 1st through the 3rd. Now, it is a holiday weekend, so today is Labor Day, and that will count on the 4-day total, but it's really not that important this weekend, or any Labor Day weekend for that matter. For whatever reason, Labor Day is just not a huge holiday. It hasn't been for, I think, at least 10 years. I'll have to look and see what the last big one was. I think it was like the Halloween remake about 10 years ago in 2007. I think it made around 30 something. It's just, for whatever reason, has never been a big weekend at the box office. And some people online were sort of wondering why that is. I think for a lot of reasons. I think the big reasons that are very clear are that August is a holiday month for most people. It's becoming more and more a holiday month in the United States. Over in Europe, it's has been a holiday month for decades, where people basically take off the entire month of August. That's not the case in the U.S. and Canada, but it's getting closer to that, where people take off a couple of weeks. It's just very quiet, and especially in the mid to late August range. That's when people are getting ready to go back to school. So you basically have anybody under the age of like 22 is probably heading back to school in this time period. Obviously, colleges start a little bit earlier. They start about mid-August. So you lose a lot of those people because they're doing all the social stuff at school. And then from high school on down, this has changed since I was that age, but I think they're starting even earlier. We started about the last week of August, from I remember, but that's the case now, or if not even earlier. So it's kind of a transition period for, I guess, our culture and society, where younger people are just going back. People are on holidays. It just tends to be a pretty quiet month overall. Now, this August has been especially kind of crazily quiet. Basically, I'm not sure if it's just because they didn't schedule any huge tentpole films for this month. Like, we had Dark Tower, which I think may have been supposed to be a tentpole, but if they thought that was going to be a tentpole, I think they're probably not very smart. The Dark Tower is never going to be a tentpole movie. I think they tried to market it that way and maybe edit the film to make it that way. It certainly had this sort of blockbuster feel to it, but it had none of the hype. It had none of the excitement of a Suicide Squad or a Guardians. Those are two August releases that were 4 quad tentpole movies. Dark Tower did not have that at all. And I walked through this last weekend in terms of week by week what happened this summer. I think the big issue is that not only was August basically barren, but July just wasn't explosive like it normally is. And we're off about, I don't see the exact figure right now, but from late June until now, the box office is off about $750 million from last year. And you think, how is that big? Is that small? Well, obviously it's a large amount of money, but how do you relate that to the overall box office? Well, the issue there, it's about 7% of the annual box office just gone. It does about $11.3 billion domestically each year, the box office. $750 million is a large chunk of that. And to have that just sort of go missing, and I say go missing kind of playfully, like it's just gone, right? Like August was terrible. I think the worst August since 1997. And July wasn't that great either. And then, there's a lot, I went into a lot of reasons why that happened. But that sort of, especially last week, if you want to know a lot more about that, listen to last week's episode where I walk through the summer week by week and basically, what was happening from May until now. But here we are at Labor Day. Labor Day is always quiet. There has not been a major release in 3 weeks. So a lot of what happened this summer and this Labor Day weekend is compounding issues, right? Like, there wasn't a lot in July, so people didn't go to see a lot of movies in later July, and everything was sort of tapering down. And then they just don't release anything major in August. Dark Tower I wouldn't consider major. I think it was a big bet, and then it failed. But there wasn't really any other big movies coming out in August besides, Hitman's Bodyguard doesn't seem like it was going to be that huge. It's doing well just because it's a vacuum. There's nothing out there. And it's just been just a super quiet August. So we get to this Labor Day and it feels like, I think it's going to be the worst Labor Day, I don't know, I think in 25 years or something. I forget what Box Office Mojo was saying. Worst Labor Day in 17 years. And that's already a super depressed holiday at the box office. So it's pretty terrible, to be honest with you. But I think if you look at this weekend and see what happened, like there's no major openers, so the holdovers are gonna do pretty well, and they're not gonna drop that much. So let's walk through the top 10, and then we'll maybe talk about the bigger picture of this summer. And I'm gonna go through a Deadline article here that talks about the reasons or the lessons that should be learned, and we'll talk about that a bit. So number 1 this weekend was The Hitman's Bodyguard, and these are the 3-day estimates that I have. I don't think the actuals are out yet for the 3-day, but they might be. This is what I got. So $10.5 million for The Hitman's Bodyguard coming in at number 1. A nice 2.6% jump from last weekend. Notice the jumps this week. There's almost nothing that falls off because nothing came out. It's a holiday weekend, so more people are going to be going to the theaters. But these numbers, 10.5 million won the weekend. Think about that. Think about that in terms of the bigger openings this year, like Spider-Man, like Guardians, like Wonder Woman, all well over $100 million, and they obviously won those weekends. But that's how sort of pitiful this weekend is. So 10.5 million for The Hitman's Bodyguard, which I will also say, kind of weirdly about this film, and I didn't realize this, but Hitman's Bodyguard is obviously released in the theaters here domestically in the US and Canada and throughout the world. But it's already on, I believe it was on last week, Japan's Netflix. So you know what's going to happen there. The moment it's on a streaming service, someone's going to rip that HD stream of the film and put it up online. It's already on all the sort of pirated websites. I've seen a copy of it HD. It's like watching it on Netflix, and it's like, man, someone did not think that through properly. And I'm not going to get into the pirate, non-pirate sort of discussion, but you're going to have to assume if you put out an HD stream of a movie, it's going to be pirated basically immediately. That has to do something. to the box office, because I was thinking about going to see this because it's just so quiet. I've got Movie Pass. I go constantly to movies, so it's like whatever. It's not really going to cost me anything to go. But I saw a little bit of the stream online. I was like, this looks terrible. I just didn't want to see it at all. The CGI looks especially bad in it. I don't know what's going on. But enough of my criticism of the film. It's still in about 3,370 theaters. Per theater average is a decently healthy 3,100 for its third weekend. Total take so far is 55 million. I think, overall, if you're taking a look at this, like, what is this? What's the barometer for success here? I think it's doing pretty well. I had hoped that it would open in the 30s and 40s just because of Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson, two huge stars. It didn't really pop off like I thought it would. It certainly had the runway to do so. There's nothing else out. But it didn't. But that doesn't matter because its legs are actually kind of kicking in okay here, just because of the wide open box office. And it's, I think it's won the last, I want to say at least the last 2 weekends. I think the last 3 weekends. So it's number 1. Let's keep this train rolling. Number 2 is Annabelle Creation. Kind of a bigger surprise of the later summer. 7.5 million this weekend. A small 2% drop. Lost about 200 theaters. Per theater average this weekend was about 2,200. Total gross so far for Annabelle Creation is about 90 million, 89, 90 million dollars on a $15 million production budget. And there's no way they spent more than $30 million to market this thing domestically, maybe 40. This is a gravy train. This is a total gravy train. And a big surprise for a lot of reasons. One is that the original Annabelle, despite popping off a lot in October of, I want to say 04, I'm sorry, not 04, 2014. Despite popping off and being a really popular movie to go see opening weekend the first couple of weeks, the reaction to it critically was not very good. So I was surprised that the sequel to that film in the sort of Conjuring, James Wan, Blumhouse universe is doing quite well, and a lot higher than I had thought for this one, a lot higher. I don't know where it's going to go because it's going to hit a wall on Thursday. It comes out, and it's sort of the movie I've been talking about a lot over the last few weeks. It's going to decimate everything. They're talking at least $65 million opening. That's basement for a horror film is insane when considering that the most quote unquote successful horror films are successful once they hit that $100 million mark. That's like the big win for them. Like Conjuring 2 did just over $100 million, and that was considered a big win. Why? Because their production budgets are usually tiny. If you look at Annabelle Creation, it's only $15 million production budget, and it's going to probably make $100 million bucks. I just can't believe it's going to make $100 million. I mean, not that it wasn't, I haven't seen it yet, and I'm a big horror fan, so I'm probably going to see it. It just did not seem to the level of the Conjuring films or the original Annabelle. I kind of liked the original Annabelle. The ending was terrible. The last third was bad. The first 2/3 I thought was great. So it's super surprising to see this get there. But I think it is sort of the juggernaut that will, I think this will make it, it's got to make it to 100. But once it comes out, it's going to sort of lose its chance to make any more money, essentially. And number 3 this weekend, a big surprise. Maybe it shouldn't be, and I sort of have a mea culpa on this one. Wind River, 6.2 million, jumped 35% from last weekend. Added 500 screens, so it's on about 2,600 screens right now, or theaters. Per theater average was 2,400 this weekend. Not bad. Total take so far is about 19 million. This is what I've talked about a little bit on the show. I saw it. It's one of my favorite movies that I've seen in a long time, probably in the last few years. This is Tyler Sheridan. He's famous for Hell or High Water, Taylor Sheridan. Famous for Hell or High Water last year. He wrote that script. I believe he also wrote Sicario, if I'm correct. And this is his first directed movie. And he also wrote the script. So it's a big deal for him. And the fact that it's going to, breach 20 million, no problem. And, it is kind of counter programming to it and the other stuff coming out. So I don't see it fading away that quickly. I could see this one sitting at the multiplex for a long time. I'm surprised it got out to 2,600 theaters, to be honest with you, because it did seem a little arty. But you know, it's gonna get well into the 20s. And you know, I think that I wonder if it has a chance to take over Hell or High Water. It might. I gotta figure out what the hell that movie did though. This one's interesting for a lot of reasons. One, I didn't agree with I thought it was kind of a strange. Hell or High Water did 27 million. It might make that. I'm not really sure, but it has a chance, which I did not expect going into this August when it was released. I thought it was kind of a mistake to release it in August just because it was such an arty type film. It felt like an Oscar type film, and I think that it is. And I think maybe the Weinstein Company even lucked out a bit. They're not geniuses because they also released Leap last week, which is making essentially nothing. I think they lucked out with a really quiet August and a really good movie, and I think it's connected with people in the initial cities that it rolled out in. It's definitely an adult movie. I would say like over 30 would be the sweet spot for this film. But it's played the August really well, and I don't know. I think it's hit that tipping point where enough people have seen it and loved it, and the word of mouth is really good. And now it's in a lot of theaters. It's going to stay there probably for at least a couple of weeks, and it's really good counter programming to it. And so I did, because it's like the adult drama that, you know, if you don't want to see a crazy horror movie, it's the perfect movie to go to. Although it's pretty dark, I will say. But I think a big win for Wind River. We'll see if it can match Hell or High Water. If it can match Hell or High Water, that would be a big surprise to me. But it seems like there's some potential there. But I think a big win for that movie. I just talked about this one. Number 4 was Leap. Animated film. I think it's French. I don't even know. Did about 4.8 million, 1,800 per theater. Not great. It's the second weekend, $11 million total. I don't even want to talk about this one. Kind of just thrown out there for no reason. I think they changed the voices in the movie too. I was sort of looking through the production history of it. It just seemed like a total mess and a total non-starter, and it's proven to be that at the multiplex. Weinstein's going through some weird shit. I don't know if they don't have any money. I think they're kind of running low on cash or something. I have no idea why they released this when they did, with basically zero marketing too. So the fact that it's even made 11 million is actually a little bit surprising, I think. Number 5 was Logan Lucky, 4.5 billion, plus about 5% from last weekend. Still on about 3,000 screens. Per theater average is not very healthy at 1,500. Total take so far is about 21 million, or 21.5 million to be exact. This was a big experiment. Steve Soderbergh basically said, I want to try and make a movie outside of the studio system and market it the way that I want to, and kind of play a lot with the financials and the production financials and see if he could do it a different way. Unfortunately, he failed. Like, it didn't pop off at all. I can't remember what it opened at, but it did not open very well. It opened at, opened at 7.6 million. That is horrific on 3,000 theaters. That is so bad. I don't know what happened with it. I mean, it's very highly regarded among critics. I think it's well over 90% in Rotten Tomatoes. Something happened with the marketing, I would say. You had big stars. You had a really good movie, it sounds like. Objectively a good movie based on critic score, 92% Rotten Tomatoes. It just seemed like a bad marketing. Either it was bad release date. I went to a really long post about this on Reddit, and I can't remember what I was saying. But I think at the end of the day, what really caused this movie to fail wasn't the movie itself, wasn't even the content of the marketing, because the content of the marketing, although they played it a little bit too clever, kind of like a Coen Brothers movie, it did kind of seem like Ocean's 11 for rednecks, which is cool. Who would want to see that? That sounds fun. It seems like a real crowd pleaser too. So it wasn't really the content of the marketing. I don't think with a low opening weekend like that, it clearly wasn't word of mouth, right? So it's a good film. I think the marketing was good. I think at the end of the day, it mostly had to do with how they marketed it, not what did they put in the marketing. That is the timing. One of the big experiments that Soderbergh did, this is in, I think, the New York Times or LA Times, I can't remember what it was, where he walked through why this was kind of a big experiment, was that they spent all of their marketing budget, for the most part, or a large portion of it, I should say, not all of it, on the last 3 weeks before release. Because Soderbergh's idea there was that that's where you're going to get your most bang for your buck. And he wanted to, I think, cut marketing costs like, I don't even know, probably in half of what a normal movie does. Normal movie nowadays, wide release, wow, you're talking at least $50-60 million just domestically in US and Canada to market that film. A wide release, 3,500, 4,000 screens, something like that. So he wanted to basically trim that down a ton by just marketing the last 3 weeks. I think that's where it failed, right? Because if this had marketing in May and June a lot more, I'm of the idea that you have to build awareness for a film way out in advance. Now, not necessarily like an MCU where there's like a teaser trailer 3 years before the movie comes out, which is what they tend to do. But for a movie like this where it is original content, despite the fact that you have stars in it, like Daniel Craig and Channing Tatum. What is with me in his name? Channing Tatum? Is that a real name? Every time I can't figure it out. And Adam Driver, famous from Star Wars now, is, I guess, Darth Vader. Is he Darth Vader in that? Jesus, I'm an idiot. In any event, you have big stars, is what I'm trying to say, being the key there. But it's original content, so it's not a superhero movie. It's not a comic book movie. You don't have a built-in audience. You really need to build that awareness months in advance. So by the time it comes out in August, people have already just in their head said, I'm going to see that movie. But they needed to say that back in July or June. They didn't need to see it like 2 weeks before it gets released. They see a trailer or something. And it just, I don't know, it didn't work. And I think the other thing, and I know I gave it free pass in the marketing, the only other thing that I think could have caused the failure here is that it did look like kind of a quirky movie. It didn't look like a normal blockbuster, I'll tell you that much. But Soderbergh, like, he never makes like a normal blockbuster, right? I mean, his Ocean's movies are the closest you're going to get. But the marketing did feel a little quirky. But if you match that up with the fact that Soderbergh focused the marketing on southeastern cities, like North Carolina, where I'm at, in Tennessee, and probably Georgia, the reality is it's just not that type of marketing and that quirkiness isn't going to play that well down here. That's something that would play well in Los Angeles or Chicago or New York, more urban places. And that's why I sort of dinged him for like having like Coen Brothers type advertising. It seemed like almost like a Coen Brothers movie. And that's not going to play well down here. Like, it's just not. Like, maybe the art house theaters in the big cities, but that's it. And so I think there might have been an error there too by just focusing his marketing dollars on specific areas and cities, more conservative, more NASCAR-esque areas. I just don't think that worked out very well. Something went wrong, nonetheless. It is not doing very well at all. And who knows where it's going to end at, but it's going to be under 40. So kind of a disaster, I would say, for them. Let's move quick. Dunkirk, 4.4 million this weekend. Total gross so far is 179 million. Overall story, big win. One of the bigger wins of the summer. I was sort of like wishy-washy on it probably about a month ago, but now with these legs that have come in, I think it's a big win for Christopher Nolan. And kind of a big risk that Warner Brothers took. I think it was a big risk, a World War II movie. But it's Christopher Nolan. It's done very well, and the legs have been fantastic. And as people let that movie settle a little bit more, it's becoming Best Picture hype. There's a lot of that going on with it because when I first saw it, I was like, oh, wow, this is really good. But now looking back on it, it's like, well, that but's becoming less and less. Like, it's sort of like, this is a really, really amazing film. So I think it's going to ride that hype all the way to Oscar season late this year and early next year. Number 7 was Spider-Man Homecoming, 3.6 million. Nice 30% jump. This one just won't stop. It won't stop. 324 million, way beyond the expectation when it launched. With its opening weekend and second weekend, people were thinking like, oh, if it makes 300, that would be okay. But it's gone well beyond that, well past the 2.7 multiplier, which I think is great for an MCU film. A 6th Spider-Man movie in 15 years, and it has a multiplier that's 2.7x. I don't think you could be unhappy about that at all. So that's a big win for Sony. And Sony definitely needs a win, let's be honest. I mean, they've sort of been in the doghouse for the last few years. So I'm sure they're happy with that performance. On number 8 was Despicable Me 3, 2.5 million, 40% jump. That's a pretty big jump. Total so far is 257 million. I talked about this one a lot this summer. This one held on pretty long too. So I think earlier when it's run, kind of like Spider-Man, it didn't seem like it was going to do all that well. Now compared to the other movies, you know, it's not a huge win in terms of the Despicable Me 3 or Despicable series. Despicable series, more like, is it Minions or Despicable Me? I guess Despicable Me, because that came out first. It did better than that one, but that was 7 years ago. So there's some inflation involved. And so it's kind of equal to that one, or probably end up equal to the original. Nowhere near the second one, which did 416 million, and nowhere near Minions, which came out 2 years ago and did 361 million. So that's about 100 million off of Minions. It's pretty terrible. But the response to Minions was not great from what I remember. So it's kind of a push, I think, at the end of the day. Obviously, Universal wanted to get well into the $300 million zone. That didn't happen. And who knows? I think it's probably going to be a push. I don't think anybody's going to lose any money off of that one. Just because the production budget's only about 80 million. Number 9, oh my God, the Emoji Movie, 2.4 million. Somehow is made $80 million at the box office. Anybody who sees this movie, please, I don't know. I don't even know what to say about it. It's just, it's a terrible film. Critics hated it. Audiences have absolutely ravaged it. Hell, my mom saw it with my nephew, and she was like, this movie's trash. She's usually not that critical of children's films. So I don't know how it got to $80 million. I give credit to Sony for figuring out a way to make a terrible movie $80 million. Hopefully it disappears quickly. Number 10 is Girls Trip. One we've been watching for a while, 2.3 million, 2% drop. It's starting to lose theaters. Lost about 200 theaters this weekend, still in 1,600. Total take so far is 111 million dollars. Why am I losing my mind right now? I see 111 and I'm like, I don't know what that is. What is that number? $111 million so far. Huge win. I think Girls Trip is just like, and I think Deadline goes into the article that I'll mention, or mentions Girls Trip in the article I'm going to talk about in a bit, but it's, you know, rated R comedies have been have had a real sort of just down period for the last few years, and the little highlights like Bad Moms last year and now Girls Trip suggest that like they got to liven, got to differentiate these films. Like people don't want to go and see Old School for the 20th time, you know, or Step Brothers or something like that. They need, if you're going to do a rated R comedy, it has to be a unique take on the genre. I think Girls Trip was, and that's why it's so successful. $19 million budget on that one, and it's just cruising past 100 million like nobody's business. So that's great. So that's the top 10 so far. You know, I've walked through most of the summer. Is there anything outside the top 10 we should talk about? Oh, there's a couple things actually before I move on. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, they did a re-release on 900 theaters. Only made about $2,000 per theater. Came in about $1.8 million this weekend. Whatever. I guess I don't know who thought that would be a good idea. It's not like it cost them a ton to release it, I don't think, but like just did not do well. Inhumans, that was like an MCU thing on IMAX. Did okay, like 393 theaters. $3,800 per theater. I guess that's okay. the one of the, I guess I wouldn't call it a major release, but Tulip Fever, Weinstein again. This movie's been in like development hell, I think, for 3 years. Not even development hell. I think it was shot in 2014 and is now just getting released. I don't know what happened with it. Released on 765 screens this weekend. Did 1.1 million, only $1,500 per theater in its opening weekend. From a major indie, I don't know if Weinstein's even indie. I guess it's not. It's owned by Disney, right? So not even really an indie film. I don't know. I don't know what happened with that. I don't know why you even released that. Like, just throw that up on like Netflix or something and someone will find it, and if they like it, they like it. What else is going on out there? Ingrid Goes West, a limited feature, tried to go wide and failed. Same thing with Good Time. They're basically neck and neck. Ingrid Goes West, I feel like, I don't know, it's Neon Distribution. They're pretty new, very new actually. And A24 for Good Time, also decently new. I don't know what happened. You know, it's a wide open August. Ingrid Goes West especially. I saw that and I thought it was awesome. What an interesting movie. Definitely a little arty and very dark, but like there's no reason it can't make 10 million in the theater. I don't know. You know, I went on a long rant about that movie before and Good Time as well. It just does not feel like there's really an audience for these films in the theaters anymore. There's just not. Like, but it's a double-edged sword, because if you try to go straight to streaming, is anybody going to find it? You know, I feel like this choice between Netflix, HBO, Amazon, and the theater isn't good enough anymore. Like, there needs to be another service that exists for films like this that maybe is more expensive than Netflix. Maybe it's $30 a month or $20 a month. But you get like, because I might watch Tulip Fever if it was on that, even though it looks terrible. I would watch Good Time. I would watch Ingrid Goes West. Another good example, I would watch Patty Cakes, which was a Sundance darling, has completely collapsed trying to release in the theaters. It added 240 screens this weekend, so it's on about 300. You know what it did this weekend per theater? $853. Like that's an absolute debacle. So those movies need another outlet that isn't. I think the downfall, or the downside, I should say, of releasing it straight to streaming would be it's gonna get lost, right? And I totally see that. Like, and a lot of independent distributors have talked about this, that they'll sell something to Netflix and they'll never see it again. You know, it gets buried down the list of new releases. There's thousands of things coming out every day, it feels like. It just feels like there's this middle no man's land for these films that needs to be filled up with another streaming service, I think, or something like that. In any event, that's sort of the rundown for the top 10. Worst Labor Day weekend in 17 years. It's been the worst August in 10 years. I'm sorry, 20 years, since 1997. 1997 feels like 10 years ago to me, but it's not. It's 20 years ago. So that, you know, in terms of the overall summer, right? Like it's been tough. It's been a tough summer. And I don't want to go on too long about it, because I know I've talked about it a lot in the last few podcasts, but it is good to take a step back and see what did really well. You know, obviously the comic book movies came in 1, 2, 3 this summer, right? Wonder Woman won this summer, hands down. I actually just saw it last night. Really good. You know, it's like, I'm not a huge comic book guy, but especially the first half of that movie was awesome. Second half, not great. But the first half was fantastic. Man, really a lot of fun. Chris Pine's great in it. So Wonder Woman, Guardians, Spider-Man. Spider-Man really had strong legs in the last month. I mean, I can't stress that enough, because when that thing opened, it was like doomsday. People are like, that's $117 million opening for Spider-Man. That's not even near what it should be. And people were thinking it's not even going to make 300 million, but it's gone past that. So it's interesting. It's a weird dichotomy, because a lot of the times when people criticize Hollywood, they say what? They say it's too many sequels, too many comic book movies, it's all the same, blah, 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 blah. But people go and see comic book movies. There's no way you can argue against that. The top 3 movies this year, you know, taking in almost over $1 billion, right? Yeah, over $1 billion this summer alone was Guardians, Spider-Man, and Wonder Woman, and that's just in the U.S. and Canada. So you can't really argue with that, with creating those films. They're great products and people love them, and they're super entertaining. Despicable Me 3 did decently well, 258. It was just a really quiet summer overall. Dunkirk came in at 180. Pirates 172, Cars 3 150. I would say Pirates and Cars very disappointing in terms of those numbers. War for Planet of the Apes very disappointing at 144. Transformers incredibly disappointing at 130. So you have these big wins up top and these pretty significant losses. This is just in the top 10 for the summer. When you get to the bottom of that top 10, it's just a shit show, to be honest with you. Pirates, Cars, Apes, and Transformers, especially Transformers, just collapsed. So it's interesting. You have a weird dichotomy. I think Deadline gets into this a little bit in the article I'm going to talk about. They talk about the lessons for this summer. And one of their lessons is know when your franchise is tapped out and when to reboot. And I think that's a very good lesson, right? Because when you're looking at the top 10 for this summer, the fresh movies, the really fresh franchises, Wonder Woman, DCU has had a really rough go of it the last year or so, or last couple of years. I don't think the Superman movies are very good, to be honest with you. I've watched them all, and I don't enjoy them in the least. I thought Batman vs. Superman was a travesty of film. I've never seen anything like that as a blockbuster being that bad. It was bad. And Suicide Squad, despite making a lot of money, I thought was also pretty bad. I think Wonder Woman is by far the best DCU movie that's ever come out in the last, 10 years or whatever. Or at least the real DCU. I'm not counting the Batman stuff, like Batman Begins through Dark Knight Rises. So Wonder Woman felt very fresh, right? It felt very fresh, very hip, very cool. And that's why it won. Guardians did not seem tired. Everybody loves Guardians. Guardians is fun. It didn't seem tired at all. It seemed like a really good time. Spider-Man was a reboot, right? I haven't seen it yet. I don't really want to see it, but I get the attraction to it, right? Spider-Man's one of the biggest comic book characters. Sony made the right call and basically said, hey, Amazing Spider-Man, that series is not working. The original sort of hit a brick wall in Spider-Man 3. We want to make another Spider-Man movie. Let's just redo the whole thing. And they made a good call. Other films like Pirates of the Caribbean, War for Planet of the Apes, and Transformers especially, they needed to do something different this go around, and they didn't. And I feel bad, especially for Planet of the Apes, because critically it's a hit. Critics loved this movie, and they thought it was very well done, but it did not connect with any of the audiences. You want to know why? Because it seems exactly like the last movie. I haven't seen a Planet of the Apes movie since like 2011, the one with John Lithgow and I think James Franco. That one was fine. But this last one seemed like a carbon copy of the one before. Same thing with Pirates, same thing with Transformers. These long-going series, they just looked like they were phoning it in, and audiences are becoming hip to it. But I think they're just becoming more intelligent on some level. And that's not to say that Wonder Woman, Guardians, or Spider-Man are just more intelligent films. But they're more entertaining, right? They're more entertaining. There's more coolness and freshness factor in those films. Transformers, Pirates, and Apes just seemed super, super boring. It didn't seem like anything new. And why would I spend $15 to go see a movie I've already seen before? I think that's the wall that was hit. This is good. I'll just transition over to the Deadline article. This is perfect. They talk a lot about Transformers. Another big ones that, kind of older school movies that you thought would do well, like The Mummy, and Alien Covenant, and King Arthur. Those ones are a little bit harder to explain. Alien Covenant, I think, because it's a Prometheus prequel, is it part of the Aliens thing? It was the most confusing marketing ever. I didn't know if it was part of the Aliens thing or the Prometheus thing. I know they're all part of the same universe. it looked like an Aliens movie to me, and it didn't look very good. And that was toxic word of mouth on that one. But that one's harder to explain with the whole. It seemed kind of fresh and new. It had a cool cast to it. It just didn't open very well, and the quality was very suspect. And audiences kind of stayed away after the first wave of people saw it and said it was not very good. The Mummy, I think, was also, there was an issue there. What ends up happening is that there becomes, I don't want to use the word meme, but there becomes this collective thought process about the movies. And this has been going on since I was really following movies 20 years ago. But the collective wisdom, I think, of a lot of people, especially in America, is that they make a lot of trash movies, right? Big studios make a lot of trash movies, and they're sick of it, and they don't want to go and see them. But they don't apply that to every sort of movie like that. Like with the MCU stuff and DCU stuff, they're like, oh, whatever, it's different, right? But they end up sort of targeting all of that negativity and criticism towards films like Transformers, and I think The Mummy is a good example of this, where The Mummy isn't really like anything out that's been out in the theaters. It was kind of a throwback to, let's say, it just kind of seemed like a mid-90s film when kind of big action movies and adventure movies were still sort of a thing. Now comic book movies have essentially taken over that genre, but it's different, right? And The Mummy, I think the other day you had Tom Cruise, you had a really good trailer. And what's crazy about The Mummy is that the opening half hour of that film is awesome in terms of action adventure movie. I thought it was just really, really fun. But by the time you get 30 minutes in, it becomes one of the worst train wrecks I have seen of a blockbuster film. I feel like there's like 30 minutes of just Russell Crowe talking to Tom Cruise, and I'm watching this and I'm like, I don't give a flying fuck about any of this. Why would I care about this conversation that they're having, or some mythology about Universal's dark verse, or whatever they want to call it, the sort of movie universe they're trying to build? I don't care. I want to be entertained. It's an action adventure movie. I want constant stuff going on. I want Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, or Raiders of the Lost Ark, something like that, where it's like you never can really catch your breath. It's just like a really fun ride. The Mummy wasn't that. So I think The Mummy basically kind of got a lot of that general criticism about kind of shitty movies being made by big studios and thinking people are just going to go no matter what. They got a lot of that criticism, but then they also got the fact that it was a terrible film. And then the word of mouth was toxic. So it's like Alien, Covenant, and The Mummy kind of seem almost like in the similar boat. Like it just seemed like, oh, here's another one. And then when people did go see it, it was like, this is awful. And sort of just, they could not recover at all from that. And King Arthur is, I think, is a special case. I know I've talked about that one a lot. But where it doesn't really fall, I mean, King Arthur is like the biggest flop since, I want to say, John Carter. It's one of the biggest flops ever in Hollywood. And we're talking $200 million in loss, probably. That one, I don't know. I honestly, I don't know why that happened. It seemed terrible. When I first saw the first trailer, I was like, this looks stupid. It looked like all gray tones. And I was like, like, we have Game of Thrones now. Like, we don't need these movies anymore. They just blew a ton of cash on it, and Guy Ritchie has no idea what he's doing. With a movie like this, the lead was bad. The guy from Sons of Anarchy, I don't think he's a great actor. That's just me. It just seemed like bad decision after bad decision. I think The Mummy, Alien, and Legend of the Sword are all flops from big studios. But they sort of they seem kind of in their own little world. It's the Transformer stuff and the Pirates movies that seem like it's more of a tell as to what's happening in the industry. And the lesson that Deadline has about this summer is, and I've said this already, know when your franchise is tapped out, know when to reboot. It's hard for Transformers, right? Like Transformers, especially when you're in the business, right? Transformers made an estimated, the last one, I don't know what the hell it's called, nor do I care, $250 million in profit. not at the box office. That's in profit, overall revenue. They made $250 million in profit. This one right now, according to the Deadline article, is losing money, right? So if you made a product and it made $250 million in profit, and then you made a very similar product, what is it, only 3 years later, and it's a loss, that seems to be a pretty seismic shift in the industry. And I think that there is one. And I think a lot of the studios in this article especially are sugarcoating what's happening. Something has shifted dramatically. I don't know if all of a sudden people just got super pissed off about Transformers. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know what it is. I've always hated those films. I always thought that they were trashy and kind of a waste of time and money, because ultimately you're just watching explosions on screen. The characters are terrible. There's no character development. There's no actual emotional drama. That's why people really see movies, is the emotional drama of people. And when you have a movie like Transformers, there's a lot of movies that do the action and the emotional narrative well at the same time. Baby Driver is a perfect example of that from this summer, where it is an action film, but there is a lot of emotion happening with the characters, and you can feel both at the same time. Transformers, the series, is essentially just a CGI fest. And I've always seen it that way ever since it started, 10 years ago, I think. So what I find fascinating is all of a sudden the general public has just realized this or something. And now they hate Transformers. No one wants to see these movies. It's interesting because I see it from a different perspective than a lot of other people, but I could tell when this trailer dropped that it just seemed, wow, this seems super lame. And why are they making movies like this still? Granted, the earlier Transformers stuff, it was like, it's interesting to look at, and I thought felt very like vibrant and fresh. This did not. It felt very tired and boring. And maybe that's the thing. Like, maybe it just comes down to marketing and actual content. You have to make stuff that, and it's hard to put into terms because what you're talking about is aesthetics, right? Like, when I say the Transformers trailer looked tired and boring, what does that really mean? And I'll admit, like, the Spider-Man Homecoming trailer, despite the fact that I don't want to see that movie at all, looked kind of fun. Same with Wonder Woman to some degree, and especially with Guardians. They just looked like fun, adventurous. It looked like a good time. Transformers did not look like a good time. Pirates looked like an absolute bore. King Arthur looked atrocious. So maybe there's something in that where in order for a blockbuster film to do well, it not only has to have a large marketing spend and a lot of, push behind it, but there has to be something culturally almost maybe explosive in it that really gets people going and hyped up. And none of that happened for the big failures this year. Another lesson that Deadline had from this summer is program a 4-quad movie during the first weekend of August. I've talked about this a lot already in this podcast, but it bears repeating. Like, Guardians of the Galaxy opened in August, right? Suicide Squad opened last year in August. They both did insanely well. I don't know if I'd call Suicide Squad a 4-quad movie, though. Maybe it was. I don't really know. Was it R or PG-13? Must have been PG-13. They're right. Deadline is 100% right. And I think it goes even further than that. I think people have underestimated August, right? Sure, I've talked about why it's quiet. But there's a lot of weekends and weeks throughout the year that are super busy for people where they still go and see movies. The holidays is like the busiest time of the year, but it's also like the best time of the year at the box office. I don't think August is some lost cause like it's being treated by the studios. The Dark Tower was an experiment, I think. It wasn't really